CEO panics when the system crashes. Then a janitor's kid walks in and shocks everyone. What happens when a CEO panics over a system crash and the janitor's kid steps in to save the day? You won't believe how this 12-year-old genius changed the course of a billion-dollar company overnight. Stay tuned for a story that proves sometimes the biggest heroes come from the most unexpected places. It was supposed to be a routine Monday at Madison Tech Industries, a Fortune 500 software company nestled in the heart of Austin, Texas. The company had just landed its biggest government contract yet, a $50 million cybersecurity upgrade for federal hospitals across the country. All eyes were on their young, high-powered CEO, Logan Prescott, a Harvard grad with a sharp jawline, a sharper mind, and zero tolerance for failure. But at precisely 9:17 a.m., everything came crashing down, literally. Alarms screamed. Monitors blinked into black. Lines of code evaporated. One moment the office was humming with confidence, and the next, complete chaos. The company's core data servers, containing thousands of sensitive medical encryption codes, had gone offline. "What the hell is happening?" Logan barked, storming out of his corner office. His Bluetooth earpiece was still connected, streaming furious calls from federal partners demanding answers. He yanked it off. The head of cybersecurity, Renee Larson, was already on the floor, directing panicked engineers like a battlefield general. "We've lost full access to the primary encryption keys," she shouted. "We're locked out of our own systems." "Is it a breach?" Logan's voice was clipped. "We don't know. It could be internal, but the firewall's been corrupted. This is either a rogue AI error or deliberate sabotage." Those words hung in the air like smoke. Investors were already calling. Media vans had started circling outside the building, like vultures sensing blood. If the data wasn't restored fast, the fallout would be catastrophic, not just for the company, but for Logan's reputation and the thousands of jobs tied to Madison Tech. In the midst of the chaos, janitors quietly mopped the corners of the lobby, ignored as usual. One of them, Clyde Daniels, was a quiet man in his 50s with a limp and a soft voice. He'd worked there for almost a decade but blended into the background. Few executives knew his name. That morning, Clyde's 12-year-old son Elijah sat quietly on a bench in the back corner of the lobby. School had been canceled due to a gas leak, and Clyde didn't have a sitter. So he'd brought his son along, with a tablet, some snacks, and strict instructions not to get in anyone's way. But Elijah wasn't watching cartoons. He was staring at the screens, the error codes, the red warnings flashing on glass walls. His curiosity was piqued. Back upstairs, Logan slammed his fist on the boardroom table. "If this isn't fixed in the next hour, we're done. I want every expert called in. I don't care if they're on vacation, at a wedding, or in space. Get them in here." The IT team worked feverishly, but nothing made sense. Every backdoor had failed. The system wasn't just down, it had turned against them. Downstairs, Elijah slowly stood up. He was just a janitor's kid, but what he'd seen in the error messages made his fingers itch. He whispered, "I think I know what's wrong." Back upstairs in the executive suite, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The conference room, normally filled with presentations and stock projections, had turned into a command center. Engineers in polo shirts hovered over laptops. Analysts pounded keyboards with sweaty fingers. Phones rang off the hook. Investors were threatening to pull funding. And Logan Prescott's composure was cracking. He stared at the massive display wall. All he saw were cascading failure codes. Red, blinking, relentless. "Where's the external backup?" he snapped. Renee, the cybersecurity chief, shook her head. "The secondary servers are mirroring the same corruption. It's like the system is fighting itself. We're dealing with something way beyond a standard crash." Meanwhile, down in the lobby, young Elijah Daniels stood frozen for a second, then walked hesitantly toward the front desk. He wasn't supposed to move. His dad had made that clear. But something inside him said this was bigger than rules. The receptionist, Cheryl, barely noticed the kid until he tugged at her sleeve. "Excuse me," Elijah said politely. "I think I can help." She glanced down, confused. "Help with what, honey?" "The system upstairs. The code that's crashing everything. I saw it. I think I've seen something like it before." She blinked. Wait, you were watching the boardroom feed? I was watching from my dad's tablet, he explained. The internal loop was still running. No one turned it off. Cheryl frowned. Normally, she would have laughed it off. But today wasn't normal. She looked around. Everyone was panicking. What could it hurt? Hold on. She picked up the phone and called the IT desk. Yeah, this is Cheryl at front. Look, don't laugh, but I've got Clyde's kid down here, and he says he saw something in the code. There was a pause on the other end. Then a tired voice replied, We've tried everything else. Send him up. Moments later, Elijah was in the elevator, his heart pounding. His dad, Clyde, was horrified. Elijah, you can't just... He started, but the elevator doors closed before he could finish. Don't worry, Dad, Elijah said softly. I just want to help. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, Elijah was met with a wall of skeptical stares. The air was thick with disbelief. The janitor's kid. What kind of joke was this? Logan looked over, stunned. Who brought the child into the control room? That's Clyde's boy, Renee said, confused. He thinks he saw something in the code, Cheryl added awkwardly. Logan's jaw clenched. This is a billion-dollar meltdown. We don't have time for games. But Elijah stood his ground. Just let me see the logs, he said, his voice trembling. Please, if I'm wrong, I'll leave. A long silence filled the room, and then, with a reluctant wave of his hand, Logan said, Fine. Pull up the console. Let's see what the janitor's son thinks he knows. Elijah stepped toward the console with cautious confidence, his worn-out sneakers squeaking against the marble floor. He could feel every eye in the room staring at him, some curious, some annoyed, most doubtful. He wasn't dressed like a coder. He wasn't even old enough to drive. But what he had was a mind wired differently. The lead systems engineer, Marcus Trent, leaned over skeptically. All right, kid, here's the live console. Logs are running. Let's see this magic trick of yours. Elijah didn't flinch. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second, then danced across the keys. The moment he touched the system, it was like watching a musician play an instrument nobody else understood. He pulled up lines of logs faster than most of the engineers had managed in hours. Here, he pointed, this isn't just a system failure, it's recursive. Look, every time the program tries to restart, it's triggering its own shutdown sequence. Marcus narrowed his eyes. He's... right. What? Renee leaned over, eyes widening. Look at the syntax loop, Elijah continued. Someone's embedded a deadlock within the boot sequence. It's not a virus, it's a miswritten redundancy script. You've been patching over it, but the error keeps reinitiating. Logan stepped closer, his irritation turning into wary intrigue. How do you know this? Elijah shrugged. I write code for fun. I've been building programs since I was 8. My dad lets me use his old laptop while he's working night shifts. I study open source encryption algorithms. For fun. Whispers rippled across the room. A few of the engineers exchanged glances. Some were visibly impressed. Others seemed embarrassed. You're telling me a 12-year-old just found the problem we missed for 6 hours? Logan asked. I think so, Elijah replied softly. And I know how to fix it. The room went quiet again. Marcus crossed his arms. And if you're wrong, then you shut me out and I go home. No harm done, Elijah said. Renee looked at Logan. Honestly, at this point, we've got nothing to lose. Let the kid try. Logan sighed. All right, do it. With the green light given, Elijah typed quickly, isolating the recursive loop and redirecting the restart script through a clean cache path. He paused, then hit enter. The room held its breath. The monitors flickered. Then, like magic, the dashboard turned green. Subsystems came online one by one. The master console blinked with the words no one expected to see that day. System restored. A collective gasp swept through the room. People who had been slumped in despair were now on their feet, cheering. Renee clapped a hand to her mouth. Marcus just stared in disbelief. Logan looked stunned. How did you do that? I just thought different, Elijah replied, blinking behind thick glasses. Sometimes simple is smarter. And in that moment, the janitor's kid became the company's unexpected savior. By noon, the news had already hit the internet. System crash averted by janitor's 12-year-old son. Madison Tech saved by boy genius. Local news vans parked outside the Madison Tech Tower, hungry for interviews. Reporters swarmed the building like bees to honey, desperate to get a glimpse of the child hero who had outcoded the professionals. Social media exploded. Clips of Elijah sitting at the console, glasses slightly slipping off his nose, hands flying across the keyboard like he belonged there, went viral on X and TikTok. Inside the boardroom, Logan Prescott paced slowly. His phone buzzed nonstop, media requests, investor calls, and a direct text from the Secretary of Health and Human Services saying, "Glad your team recovered, especially the new recruit." Elijah sat quietly in the corner, sipping a Sprite someone had handed him, while Renee knelt beside him, jotting down everything he said about how he traced the problem. "So you saw the error pattern from just watching the screen?" she asked, stunned. He nodded. "It looked like a function I messed up in my own game once. I made a spaceship crash over and over, and I couldn't figure out why. Then I realized I made the same loop mistake in my restart command." Marcus muttered, "Man, I spent 4 hours blaming the firewall." Downstairs, Clyde stood frozen in the lobby, mops and brooms forgotten. One of the front desk attendants rushed over and whispered, "They're talking about Elijah on TV. They said your son saved the company." Clyde blinked, stunned. "My son? They're talking about my son?" A limo pulled up outside. It wasn't for a CEO. It wasn't for an executive. It was for Elijah. Logan had ordered it himself. Back upstairs, Logan approached the boy with a new tone. No longer skeptical, not cold, not dismissive, but respectful. "Elijah," he said, kneeling slightly so they were eye to eye, "you didn't just save this company, you saved thousands of medical records, contracts, and jobs, and you did it with humility and brilliance." Elijah smiled sheepishly. "I just like solving puzzles." "Well," Logan added with a grin, "you've just solved the biggest puzzle we've faced in years. I'd like to offer you a mentorship program, full scholarship sponsorship, private tech mentorship with our lead engineers, and a brand new laptop." The room applauded. Renee fist-bumped Elijah. But Elijah paused, then looked around. "Only if you give my dad a promotion too," he said softly. "He's been cleaning up after you guys for 10 years. He's the reason I had the time and tools to learn all this." A hush fell over the room. Logan blinked, visibly moved. "You drive a hard bargain," he said, then turned toward the elevator. "Somebody get Clyde Daniels up here. I want to shake the hand of the man who raised this brilliant young mind." And just like that, Elijah wasn't the only hero. A janitor and his son were about to redefine what success looked like in corporate America. Clyde Daniels stood frozen as the executive assistant escorted him toward the private elevator. He hadn't taken that ride in over 10 years. As the doors closed behind him, he glanced down at his work boots, still damp from mopping the basement floors, and wiped his palms nervously on his faded janitor uniform. He couldn't wrap his head around what was happening. Just 2 hours ago, he was invisible, another quiet soul in the background, sweeping messes, fixing light bulbs, changing trash bins. Now he was being summoned to the executive suite because of Elijah. When the elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, Clyde stepped out into a different world. Marble floors, crystal lighting, suits and expensive shoes. People who once passed him without a glance now turned to face him, applauding. There was his son standing proudly beside the CEO himself. Logan Prescott extended his hand. "Mr. Daniels," he said with genuine warmth, "your son is a genius, and after today, I'll never walk past a janitor without wondering what kind of brilliance they're hiding." Clyde's throat tightened. He's always been different, smart, too smart for me, honestly, but I just wanted him to have a chance. Logan nodded. "And because of you, he got one." Then in front of the entire executive team and live streaming media outside the glass windows, Logan did something no one expected. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This," he said, handing it to Clyde, "is an offer letter. We're promoting you to facility director, tripling your salary, and giving you full access to our continuing education fund if you ever want to pursue more." Clyde opened his mouth, but no words came out. Elijah's gift didn't come from nowhere, Logan added. It came from a home where curiosity was encouraged, even if the means were limited. That kind of foundation deserves more than thanks. It deserves recognition. Tears welled up in Clyde's eyes. He looked at Elijah, who smiled proudly, then wrapped his small arms around his dad. I told you we could help people someday, Elijah whispered. You did, Clyde said, holding him tightly. You really did. Meanwhile, downstairs, the media frenzy exploded. Hashtags like Janitor's Kid Genius, Elijah Saves Madison Tech, and Humble Heroes began trending nationwide. TV crews demanded interviews. Tech influencers praised the boy's insight. Talk shows requested appearances. But in that moment, neither Clyde nor Elijah cared about fame. They were just a father and son, standing side by side, proving that greatness doesn't come with a title or a suit. It comes from grit, heart, and the courage to speak up, even when the world tells you to stay quiet. That day, Madison Tech didn't just recover from a crash. It rebooted its culture, its values, and its definition of leadership. And at the center of it all stood a humble janitor and a bright-eyed kid with a laptop. By the next morning, the Daniels family was national news. CNN aired a segment titled, Meet the 12-year-old who outsmarted the system. Literally. Good Morning America invited Elijah and Clyde for a special father-son feature. Even Elon Musk reposted a video clip of Elijah fixing the corrupted server with the caption, This kid is the future of tech. But behind the headlines and hashtags, the Daniels family stayed grounded. Elijah was still a soft-spoken middle schooler who preferred tinkering with code to being on camera. And Clyde? He still reported to work early the next morning, though now wearing a navy blue facilities director badge clipped to a crisp button-down instead of a mop-stained shirt. That same morning, Madison Tech transformed its main conference hall into a makeshift media room. Elijah, seated in front of dozens of reporters, flanked by Logan Prescott and Renee Larson, answered questions with a mix of humility and brilliance that charmed the entire room. A reporter from Tech Daily leaned forward. Elijah, what do you want to be when you grow up? I just want to keep learning, he said, eyes shining, and maybe help companies build safer systems. Ones that don't crash the second something small goes wrong. Laughter broke out, and even Logan chuckled. Another reporter asked, Where did you learn to code like that? Elijah shrugged. Mostly from free YouTube videos and trial and error. I broke my dad's computer like 7 times. He didn't get mad, though. He just kept fixing it. Clyde smiled in the audience, misty-eyed. Then a bold question came from the back. Mr. Prescott, are you planning to hire Elijah permanently? Logan turned to the boy. We can't technically hire a 12-year-old, but we've already set up a full scholarship for college. And until then, Elijah will be enrolled in our Young Innovators Mentorship Program. He'll have access to real-world projects, training, and mentorship from our top engineers. The room erupted in applause. But it was Elijah's next comment that shifted the entire narrative. He leaned into the mic and said, There are other kids like me, kids who don't have fancy schools or programs, but they're smart. They just need a shot. The audience went silent. Then Logan, inspired by Elijah's words, added, Starting today, Madison Tech will launch a nationwide initiative, the Daniels Fellowship, a program that finds and supports underrepresented youth in tech, kids from working-class families, foster care, and overlooked communities. That single announcement hit headlines harder than the original story. Madison Tech wasn't just recovering from a crash, it was creating opportunity, rewriting the rules of corporate America, and honoring its newfound heroes. And Elijah? He wasn't just a boy who fixed a server. He was becoming a symbol of something bigger, untapped genius hiding in plain sight. Back at home, life changed, but only a little, for the Daniels family. Their 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet Detroit neighborhood suddenly felt a lot smaller, with stacks of scholarship forms, press kits, and mentorship offers flooding their mailbox. But for Clyde, who still drove the same pickup truck and made breakfast for Elijah every morning, none of the fame mattered. I just want you to stay grounded, Clyde said one night over dinner, handing Elijah a plate of eggs and toast. Fame fades, but character? That's what lasts. Elijah nodded, pushing his glasses up his nose. I know, Dad. I'm not doing this for the likes. I just want to help people. True to his word, Elijah had already started tutoring 3 other kids at his school. Kids who had been labeled unfocused or underperforming. He taught them how to build basic games, how to debug simple Python code, and how to believe in their own minds. Meanwhile, the Daniels Fellowship exploded online. Applications poured in from all 50 states. Kids from rural towns, inner-city schools, and even homeless shelters applied for a chance to learn tech under Madison Tech's new Youth Forward program. The story inspired documentaries, classroom discussions, and even a trending challenge: Code Like Elijah. One viral clip showed a 10-year-old girl in Alabama fixing her school's broken attendance server using a basic loop repair. She credited Elijah's story for giving her the confidence to even try. Back at Madison Tech, the board of directors met to discuss expanding the fellowship internationally. What began as a desperate moment of crisis had transformed into a movement of digital equity and inclusion. At the heart of it all was a boy who never asked for the spotlight. Logan Prescott, once the cold, detached CEO, now led Madison Tech's humanitarian division with a renewed sense of purpose. During a televised panel, he said, "Sometimes we forget that the smartest minds aren't always in boardrooms." Elijah Daniels reminded us that genius can come from anywhere. Yes, even the son of a janitor. In one of the most emotional moments yet, Clyde Daniels was invited to speak at the National Tech and Education Forum. Standing on a stage in front of thousands, he held the mic nervously and said, "I may not have gone to college. I may not wear a tie to work, but I raised my son to ask questions, to stay curious, and to believe he had value. That's what matters. And if one janitor's kid can change the world, maybe yours can too." The crowd gave him a standing ovation. Afterward, Elijah slipped his hand into his dad's and said, "You did all this, you know." Clyde chuckled. "Nah, I just gave you the broom. You built the rocket." And as the lights dimmed and the crowd cheered, a new legacy had already begun. One built not from privilege or pedigree, but from love, learning, and a whole lot of heart. A few weeks after the Daniels Fellowship launched, Madison Tech faced its next big test. And this time, it wasn't just a system glitch. Late one evening, an anonymous hacker attempted to breach the company's internal network. The attack was subtle at first, probing ports, creating false requests, but by midnight, the system's early warning AI flagged a massive infiltration attempt. Logan Prescott, now more hands-on than ever, rushed back to HQ. Renee Larson and the cybersecurity team were already on high alert, scrambling to lock down firewalls and secure sensitive data. "This one's different," Marcus Trent muttered, staring at the code flashing across the monitor. "Whoever's doing this isn't just guessing passwords. They know our infrastructure. They're baiting us." Logan clenched his jaw. "And we've got millions of user files behind that gate. We can't afford another crisis." Without hesitation, Renee picked up the phone. "Call Elijah." Within 30 minutes, Elijah arrived wearing a hoodie, joggers, and his trademark sneakers, lugging his custom laptop and a bottle of root beer. Clyde came too, but this time, he was in a button-down shirt and his new facility director badge. As Elijah entered the control room, the chaos hushed. Everyone stepped back. "What do we have?" he asked calmly, pulling up a chair. Marcus leaned in. "Someone's trying to overwrite the authentication protocol through a dummy sandbox we didn't know was still active. If they succeed, they could mimic our internal access from anywhere." Elijah cracked his knuckles and launched his custom monitor layout. "Let's find the crack." In under 10 minutes, he pinpointed the entry. Here, it's hidden under an old contractor access log. They're looping through a legacy authentication filter. Sloppy, but smart. Renee blinked. "How did we miss that?" "Because you're still looking at it like it's a firewall issue. But they're treating your system like a puzzle, not a fortress." Elijah began coding a defensive algorithm in real time. One that would trap the intruder in a self-closing recursive maze, tracing their IP with every failed attempt. "Let's see how they like getting stuck in their own code." The room watched as the attacker triggered the trap. For a few moments, the system trembled, then froze, and finally all threat activity ceased. A blinking message appeared on the screen. "Intrusion neutralized. Identity captured." Everyone erupted in applause. Elijah leaned back, sipping his root beer. Looks like someone forgot kids still play digital tag. And I never lose. Logan shook his head, half in awe, half laughing. Kid, we need to put you on payroll once you're legal. Clyde clapped Elijah on the back. Told you he had a gift. That night, Elijah wasn't just the kid who once fixed a crash. He was now Madison Tech's unofficial chief defender. And more importantly, he proved that brilliance wasn't just about solving problems, but staying one step ahead of them. The next board meeting at Madison Tech was unlike any other in the company's history. The usual stiff room full of executives in tailored suits was now charged with anticipation. For the first time ever, a 12-year-old would be sitting in, not as a guest, but as an honorary member of the Executive Innovation Panel. Elijah Daniels, now hailed as a national prodigy, had earned more than respect. He earned influence. He walked in wearing clean sneakers, khakis, and a button-up shirt his dad had ironed for him that morning. His signature laptop was under his arm, a quiet reminder that he wasn't there to impress. He was there to contribute. Logan Prescott opened the meeting. We're here today to discuss the future of tech accessibility, cybersecurity upgrades, and the Daniels Fellowship's next phase. And we're proud to have Elijah join us as our youngest advisor. Everyone applauded, some more enthusiastically than others. A few board members still weren't sold on the idea of taking direction from a kid, but they were smart enough not to say it out loud. Elijah didn't flinch. When asked to speak, he stood confidently and walked up to the smart board. Tech shouldn't just serve the privilege, he began. We're building systems for a world that's evolving faster than the people leading it. If we don't include younger voices and people from different backgrounds, we're designing blind. He clicked to the next slide. A roadmap for a new app he'd been developing, a learning platform that teaches kids coding fundamentals through gaming. This app isn't just a toy, it's a gateway. Imagine third graders in small towns learning to write Python or build websites using real-life simulations. Logan leaned forward. You built this yourself? Elijah nodded. It's still rough, but it works. And I already have test users from the fellowship. The room buzzed. One of the senior VPs who'd been skeptical asked, how would this platform scale across public schools with limited tech budgets? Clyde, who had been invited to observe the meeting, raised his hand slightly. Logan smiled and gestured for him to speak. I'm living proof that brilliance isn't about bank accounts, Clyde said. Give a kid a dollar store notebook and access to Wi-Fi, and you'd be surprised what they'll build. My son didn't need perfect tools. He needed permission to be curious. Silence, then slow nods. The vote was unanimous. Madison Tech would fund the development of Elijah's app and partner with the Department of Education to pilot the program in underserved communities. Not only that, they proposed naming it Code Lift, powered by the Daniels Fellowship. After the meeting, Logan pulled Elijah aside. You know, I used to think success meant numbers, charts, market growth. But now I think it's about impact. And you've had more in 6 weeks than most people have in their careers. Elijah smiled. Maybe success is just solving the problems no one else wants to see. As he and his dad exited the boardroom, Elijah wasn't just a kid anymore. He was a leader, and the world was finally listening. The final chapter of this incredible journey unfolded on a crisp autumn morning in Detroit. The Daniels family, Madison Tech's executive team, and a crowd of eager supporters gathered at the newly renovated Madison Tech Innovation Center for the grand launch of CodeLift, Elijah's groundbreaking coding platform for underserved youth. Clyde stood beside his son, proud but calm, reflecting on how far they'd come. From janitor's closet to boardroom spotlight, it was a testament to resilience, grit, and belief in potential where others saw none. Elijah stepped up to the podium, his heart pounding with excitement. Thank you all for believing in the vision. CodeLift isn't just an app, it's a promise. A promise that every kid, no matter their zip code or background, can dream bigger and code their own future. The crowd erupted in applause. Logan Prescott took the stage next. Elijah and his family have taught us what true leadership looks like: humility, innovation, and courage. Madison Tech pledges to continue investing in people, not just profits. Together, we're rewriting the rules of success. The media buzzed with headlines. Janitor's son launches revolution in tech education. From mop bucket to microchips, the Daniels legacy. and how one boy changed corporate America forever. But beyond the fame and fortune, what mattered most was the impact. CodeLift's pilot programs were already live in 20 cities nationwide, and dozens of students had shared stories of newfound confidence, creativity, and opportunity. That evening, back at their modest apartment, Clyde and Elijah sat together, tired but happy. Elijah pulled out his laptop, opening the CodeLift dashboard. New user registrations were flooding in from every state. Clyde smiled, eyes shining. "You did it, son." Elijah looked up. "We did it, Dad. Together." The janitor's son, who once silently mopped floors, had become a beacon of hope for millions. And Madison Tech, forever changed, stood as a reminder that true greatness often starts with a simple act of kindness and the courage to let someone shine. As the city lights flickered outside their window, a new dawn was rising for Detroit and for every kid with a dream waiting to be unlocked. From a system crash to a nationwide movement, Elijah's story proves that brilliance can come from the most unexpected places. It's a powerful reminder that talent isn't defined by titles or backgrounds, but by courage, curiosity, and the chance to be heard. When we lift each other up, incredible things happen. If Elijah's journey inspired you, please hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more uplifting true stories. Let's spread hope and show the world that every dream deserves a chance. Comment below, who's a hidden hero in your life? We'd love to hear your story.